Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I explain all the cheats and hacking that I use to get quick. Yeah, no, I'm only joking. But I will explain how I do try and get up to speed at a given combo, given circuit, or given game, depending on what game that is. And I use these techniques, whether it's Gran Turismo, Assetto Corsa, iRacing. These are all the techniques I use in order to get better and better at a game and get quicker and quicker and quicker. And this is the goal of this video because we talked about it yesterday when I was playing Assetto Corsa and everyone was like, yes, that'd be a good video. So here we are, making it. So I've written some notes, of course, just to remind me, and hopefully this won't go on too long. I want it to be short, sharp, rather than long like I did with the driving school videos, which were like 30 minutes. So hopefully it works. We'll see. There might be some cuts here and there where I start blurbing on for days. Right, so of course, you guys chose my car in the Assetto Corsa, which was the Mclaren 720S GT3 from the Bentley. Two very different cars, Bentley front-engined rear-wheel drive, McLaren 720S mid-engined rear-wheel drive. So very different driving styles needed for both those cars. So I had to get used to the McLaren. I had to get used to it. So what did I do? Well, RCI, the GT3 League they host, had pre-qualifying rounds. It was at Kyalami and Catalonia. For those that don't know, Kyalami is a circuit in South Africa. It's a good circuit as well. I wish it was in more games, to be honest with you. But I know my time in the Bentley there, pre the latest patch, which was very low 40s, bordering 39s in the pre-qualifier, but that was cold temperatures. I knew it'd be in the 40s where we were aiming for. That's normally the goal at Kyalami is 40s. So I selected the McLaren. I chose the aggressive setup, which is a default setup. I went out and did some laps. This is the first thing I'd recommend anyone doing if you're jumping into a game or into a car. Just do some laps. Just get a feel for the car, feel for how it's reacting to you. Just get an idea if it's understeering, oversteering, is it sensitive on the throttle, you know, the feel of the physics of the game, whatever it might be. Just get a feel for it, because going between cars, even in the same game, can be very, very different. Just do those laps and put those laps in. Now, I could tell you, my first few laps were in the 143s, which is very, very, very slow. I did go into the 42s. However, that is still miles off the 40s. So I did, in this session, we had a fast McLaren driver join, which was Oscar Hull, who then ended up doing a 140.6 in the McLaren. So instantly, my thought of being a 140 was there. Oscar Hull had done a 140.6. And then I snapshotted, I literally got my snipping tool, snipped it, those sectors. So I knew where the quick sectors were, and I could then compare them every time I practiced. Am I getting anywhere close to those sectors? Where do I need to focus on to improve? This is something I recommend you do on any game. Have a look at the sectors. Very easy to say I need to be 2 seconds quicker at a circuit, but it's better to say I need half a second in a given sector. And I'll jump onto this a little bit later on, because as you know, those that watch the Spa race, there is one particular sector there I'm really struggling on, but we'll get to that shortly. So I had the sectors there. Hopefully I put them on screen somewhere, because I did save the picture. And I was using that as practice. And I practiced for the next little while in terms of a couple of hours. And I wasn't getting that much closer, to be honest with you. I was really struggling. I was at high 41s. I was like, I'm miles off here. This is a concern. What did I do? I went onto YouTube. I typed into YouTube ACC McLaren 720S GT3 setups at Kyalami. Sorry, I missed the Kyalami bit. I did put Kyalami in there. And one of the first videos to pop up was actually Tortellini's video. Tortellini is a very well-known Assetto Corsa racer, and his setup was in the description. Now, I did mention just before there was a patch for Assetto Corsa, which has changed and slowed the cars down as well, but has changed the way the cars work a little bit. However, I still took the setup anyway and applied it to the car, and I went out and tried it. I was instantly a little bit quicker. Now, the one concern I had was when I jumped in the McLaren, it was very, very, very understeery. It was hugely understeery. Tortellini's setup made it a little bit less understeery. It was still there though. So I did what you would normally do to stop understeer, raise that ride height up, apply a little bit of downforce to stop the rear over-rotating as much, and hopefully that conquered it. And it did conquer it, although I was spinning quite a lot really, because the rear was kind of high. It was very much like that in terms of the car. But it did get me down to a 141.2. Obviously, we're getting close to that 40s boundary now, so I was getting a little bit more confidence, but I was still concerned because I thought I could do a 140 in the Bentley quite easily, knowing what I've done in the past at Kyalami in the Bentley. So what I did, I jumped in the Bentley. I was like, okay, let's just set a comparative lap time. Same patch, Same environment. Let's just try it out. So I did. I jumped in the Bentley. And I did a 140.9. But as you've probably heard there, a 141.2 to a 140.9 in a car I already know, that's not a lot of a difference. So at that point, you give me a little bit of a boost. And I recommend doing that. Going in a car you know. So if you want to improve in a car, go in the car you know, set a lap time, and then go in your new car and try and get up to that point. It's the same if you're going between pad and wheel. If you're a pad player, and you've been playing the pad for years, set a lap time, and you just buy a wheel, then try and get your wheel time up to that. If that environment then changes, or the combo changes, set a pad time, then try and get your wheel close again. That's how I learned how to drive on the wheel all the way back in the days of GT Academy, which is quite a while ago. Same logic. So I'm using this constantly. So just to demo that, I do it all the time. This is how I learn. It gave me a buzz. So what I then did is obviously I had Oscar's sector times, but then I just had this brain, like, I don't know, light bulb moment. Let's go with that, a light bulb moment. And I remembered that I have autosave replays on. So guess what? I went into the autosave replays and the practice session with Oscar was still there. So I was like, perfect, because I really like Ghost. Ghost laps are perfect for this. So I grabbed Oscar's lap, I recorded it, and then I recorded my own lap, same replay file, so all the braking will be the same. And then I put them together in a comparison video, which I'll show you a little bit of that now because we're going to do something very interesting a little bit later on in the video. So here we have the lap comparison, the sort of thing that I do. And you can see here, we're offlined. So this is from the previous corner. I've taken it in the middle of the lap. I align them up, and then we're going to head up at the same time towards this next corner. Now, there may be varying speed differences. There doesn't appear to be here. We're literally changing around the same time. We're around the same speed as we come into here. What I then looked for is, am I looking at different apex speeds here? So they've not gone under 50 miles an hour. I did. That's significant. I've got a different line as well. I'm more to the right-hand side than their left-hand side. And as we come down this hill, I'm now looking for a place. I'm on the grass there, so obviously that's wrong. But I'm looking for a place here where I can stop. And as you see, I stop it here because the top left one has reached the orange marker first. And the bottom right one is miles off. So I can see there's some work to do in that corner. And I line them up again. And then I do the same thing again. So here we have, I'm actually quicker down in the right-hand side in terms of speed because of that wider line. That is significant. We're going to head towards this right-hander then. Same philosophy here. So we're going to go onto the brakes. I'm braking earlier there, it looks like to me. Obviously, I do analyze this a bit more in depth than what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to give you a bit of an insight as to what I do. I'm in a different gear. That was critical then as I came through the corner. And then we're going to align them up again there. And you can see, even though we had a bit of a boost initially, Oscar still beats me to the exit of that corner. So significant work to do there in the last sector from that lap comparison. When I look at that right now, obviously I've improved since then, but that is how I analyze a lap when I do a side-by-side comparison. I'm looking for those little things. Are the gears being changed at the same time? When am I going on the brakes? When am I going on the throttle? What are the apex speeds? All those little bits of information which can then help you improve your lap. Like that first corner that we showed, Oscar hit 50 miles an hour and didn't go under it. I did. Therefore, there's a problem. There's a 50 mile an hour apex speed, which I talk about in guides, you know, aiming for a speed. I would then start to aim for that 50 miles an hour each time, and then I'll try and alter the way I drive into the corner to make sure I always hit 50 and don't go below. That's how that works. So let's jump back to myself sat in the chair, because let's carry on with the video. Right, back to me talking, yapping, you know what I'm saying, with my face. So I could identify there where my weaknesses were, and I was still like, oh, how can I improve this? The car's still a little bit slidey. So then another light bulb moment. George Boothby. Obviously, he's a super alien in Assetto Corsa. I was like, George races the McLaren a lot. Maybe some of his, and he streams, and maybe some of his videos on demand have some sneaky little tips in there that I could use to my advantage. I went and checked George's VODs on Twitch, and then I saw the RCI pre-qualifier. I was like, oh my word, this is genius. And I also noticed he did a spa one for another racing league. So I was like, oh, that's beautiful. That's the first round as well. So I took the Kyalami. I jumped to the Kyalami bit, and I noticed he showed the toe, the camber, a few other little bits of pressures, ride height, downforce. Obviously, you can see the traction control and ABS. So a couple of things I took from that was the ride height, the downforce, and especially the toe were very different to Tortellini's. I applied them to the car. Same pressures, and suspension setup the same as what I'd been using from Tortellini's. and I went out and drove. And I noticed it was very understeery, but it was so stable. I could not believe how stable it was. I was like, wow, okay, this is what I need, stability. Because if you're stable in a car, you will always then be able to improve on it, because you can just do the same thing over and over again, brake 5 meters later. And if the car reacts in a very unstable way, you go, okay, I can't do that there. Or you go 5 meters later and you go, actually, it still works. Happy days. I'll go 5 meters more. So it was perfect. I was like, I'll apply my own thing, which was raise the ride height a tiny bit. It was nowhere near as high as Tortellini's when I'd edited Tortellini's setup. And then I changed the downforce a little bit. And voila! I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I've got the car I need. And I could see 40s now. I did a 40.9. I did another 40.9. And then I ended up as a 40.8. And critically, and this is the critical part, I could see a 0.6. Which, if you remember, was Oscar's time. So I was like, oh, finally, I'm getting closer and closer and closer. So I went away. I did Catalonia. Obviously, George had streamed that, so I took George's... I actually YouTubed a setup first, and then applied George's settings to that YouTube setup. Worked fairly well. I was within half a second of George, which is where I want to be. Half a second to George. I'm very happy with George being a super alien on a Assetto Corsa. I can say that that is where my relative speed probably should be. Bearing in mind I don't play it that often. So what I then looked at was that the RCI pre-qualifier, it was getting very, very tight. So I was on a 3:23.9 because they combined the times together. And it was getting very close to borderline making top split. So I jumped back on Kyle Army, and within 20 minutes, I'd gone down to a 40.6, seen a 40.4. George has done a 40.1. That's within half a second. And then very happy in terms of my pace. And that is what I learned. That's how I learned to drive. The critical thing there was I go out in the car first, give it a test, do a comparable lap versus my old car, knowing what it can do, and see where I am in terms of that pace. YouTube setups, if you need a setup, loads of people put their setups out there for free. Now, I will get onto Coach Dave Academy setups in just a second, but you can do that in terms of free setups. They are out there. I then obviously compared sector times. That's the big one because you're breaking down a circuit, and it is critical you do break down a circuit. It's very easy to say I need 2 seconds at a circuit. It's better to say I need half a second in a given sector because you can focus on the 5 corners rather than the 50 corners of a given circuit. I know there's not really 50, just a little bit of over-exaggeration there. Don't do that very often. Anyway, let's get on then in terms of what I'm going to do next for you. So Coach Dave Academy setups, first of all, I normally pick them out, but because I was struggling so much in the McLaren, I decided not to go down that route initially because I wanted to make sure I was in the right car. As I say, I was tempted to switch until I did the comparison between the Bentley and the McLaren. And obviously, Coach Dave Academy setups are what I used in the Bentley, and I adjusted them to my way. So if you remember my ACC setup video, I adjusted the camber to -2.7. I did try that in the McLaren, actually. It doesn't work in the McLaren. It works in the Bentley 100%. Doesn't work in the McLaren. The big key thing I found in the McLaren, critically, is literally making it a little bit pointy, but keeping it stable. And that seems to just make the McLaren quite nice to drive, actually. I quite enjoyed driving the McLaren, to be fair. It's very much, yeah, I'm liking it. Let's put it that way. Anyway, we did Spa, didn't we, last night? If you're watching this, it'll be 2 nights ago when this video goes live, but last night when I'm recording this now. And basically, one of the critical things I mentioned in the stream was I couldn't get into the 59-second barrier, so under a minute barrier in the middle sector. It's one place I was struggling so much at Spa. I was fast in the first sector, I was fast in the last sector. Only a couple of corners in those two as well, so very easy to, if you are struggling in those sectors, to just apply that. So initially, sector 1, I was about 3 tenths down originally. Well, it's one corner basically in the McLaren because you can do Orange Radion flat. So I would focus on that first corner and I got it right and I could get down to George's level for those corners. For the middle sector, I could not get into the 59. So what we're going to do now is I've recorded George's qualifying lap, his pole lap, and I've recorded my fastest lap from quali. And we're going to compare the two and try and identify where my weaknesses are. And this is the same thing I would recommend you doing as well. If you really want to figure out where you're losing time, have a look at what we're about to do right now. Here we are then with a lap comparison. We're already at sector 2, basically at the start of it. And you can see we're out of line. So I've already done the first part of this. I want to look at it myself separately. But these will line up and then we're going to go through the middle sector. We'll just have a look where we're losing time here. You can already see we're at the same speed, although George is a bit further ahead, so it looks like his braking is better. But we're coming into here then. I'm in second gear. We're coming around here. I'm looking at the apex speeds that are completely different to that. I was down at 72. George didn't drop below 76 there, really. Second part here, George slowing the car down a bit more and then able to get out there a little bit quicker. And you can see there, I've lost a bit of time, probably around half a tenth there through that corner. So I'm not losing as much time as I thought I was in that corner, which is interesting. It is interesting. Now, if I was analysing this even more in depth, I'd be stopping it mid-apex, having a look at the speed comparison as well. That's what I used to do in GT Academy. We've lined them up again. We're going to come through this corner here. I'm looking at the speeds here. And George just carrying a little bit more speed there through the exit. Doesn't look that much different, to be fair. But critically, again, it is different at the exit there. You can see George has more speed at the very end of that curb here. In that time, 2 miles an hour difference in that time. Significant. I'm already starting to see it's a setup related issue here potentially as well, and confidence in the car. But we've lined them up again. We're going to head down towards this right-hander and onto the brakes, around the same here. I've dropped to second gear very early compared to George, and George out wide a little bit there. Now, I carried a bit more speed here. I think George made a little bit of a mistake there, going more for a V-shape maybe, not too sure. As we leave that corner, we're going to head to the stopping point here. I'd argue I did that corner better there. Place where George could improve there on that right-hander. Definite mistake there. I'm definitely the lead car in that situation. George is more to the right, to be fair. I definitely think I did that corner better, but obviously we all make mistakes, and George's lap is far superior to mine here. As we come into this left-hander then, looking at the speeds, around about the same there. Nothing major through the corner. George has gone much more wider though, and yeah, that's led to a tiny increase there. That corner, I would argue, about the same. So those two corners were the same. So that's not costing me the 59. The first part of Sector 2 definitely costing me the 59. And let's see what else we can see here then, because that part is definitely not costing me the 59. Remember, we are at least 4 or 5 tenths down in this sector. And we're sitting probably, what, 1.5 tenths there in that first part. Yeah, we're heading towards Pouhon then. And in we go. So I want to see here as we go through Pouhon. We might stop this mid-apex, actually. Let's have a look. Here we go, then. So George is more to the left. I'm more in the middle. I'm carrying a lot more speed. 3 miles an hour difference here. George is on the throttle, though, whereas I'm rolling the car through the corner. That is interesting. We stopped at about the same point. I think George is a tiny bit ahead because I'm more in the middle of the circuit. So I'm closer to that billboard on the right. Very interesting. But look at this. Now, George has carried a lot more speed, more on the inside of the corner as we come through here. And look at that. George is 2 miles an hour up now. Remember, the exit is more important than the entry. So George has managed to slow the car down a bit more and get more speed on the exit, which is actually costing me time here. I can definitely see that through this corner. I'm not lining these up, by the way, until we get to the exit. But I can see here, George has carried so much more speed. Look at that speed difference. Absolutely massive. As we continue on then, and we're going to get to that curb. Yeah, there's a tenth and a half there, easy in terms of time. That puts us around that 3/10 margin. So Pouhon, I'm going in too aggressive at Pouhon. I know I was hard braking in the race as well. So I'm definitely doing Pouhon wrong. And I knew I was doing it wrong in the race. So that's something to look into. As we head then towards this chicane here, a wide chicane. In towards the braking zone we go. Now, I know I do this differently because I have seen George's that before on his other VOD. And I always stay in third gear here for stability reasons. As we come through this left-hander, though, speed-wise, he's gone up to third. He stayed at 87. How has he done that? We were at 84. George stayed at 87 miles an hour. Now, it's about half a tenth there lost because of that. But George manages to keep that speed so much higher. So something to work on there is my apex speed. I'm definitely seeing a setup issue in the car. We saw that in the race as well. Scourge mentioned it in the race with a little bit of understeer there. And that would allow me to get a bit more apex speed. So that is where we're losing a little bit of time here. As we come into this corner, then we have lined them up once again. So let's go through this right-hander. And then this will be the end of Sector 2 as we come through here. He's looking about the same. Yeah, about the same at the end of the barrier there. So we saw there the big issues, which we saw was the start of Sector 2, Lake Holme. If it's still called Lake Holme, I don't know. But definitely issues there. Definitely losing a bit of time in that section. The middle part of Sector 2, so the sharp right into the fast left. No real issues there. You could argue we did that actually better than George. George made a mistake there. But then Pouhon, we're making a big issue of that. Definitely getting wrong. I reckon a little bit of confidence in the car. Knowing it's MR, worrying about the oversteer potentially. George has definitely got it nailed, bang on the money, whereas we're definitely struggling a little bit more. And then towards the end of the lap, in the middle of the right-left there with the chicane, bit of an issue, but the last part of Sector 2, the right-hander, no issues there at all. And I was working on that a lot, actually, in practice, making sure I'm on the throttle really, really early. It's something in the McLaren I've kind of figured out you have to do. Be on throttle very, very early to really maximize the tires being pushed down on the rear, the grip out the corner, and you can just fire out of that. But that's the sort of thing I would do here in terms of a lap comparison. And that is what I would do when I'm looking at laps. And that's what I did with the Oscar one. I really looked into it, apex speeds, gear changes. Am I changing gear in the wrong place? Sometimes you can be in different gears. You saw that at the first part of that chicane there on the right, where George was in second, I was in third. But I preferred third. It stabilized the car far more than second gear. And I felt I could carry more speed that way. And it was fine. It was the second part that we had a difference in speed. George was carrying 3 miles an hour more at the second part. But I'd say this is how I would look at a lap and really in detail to really grasp it. You've seen how I'm looking to get setups and trying to improve it with that regard as well. And I do hope you've enjoyed this video. That is it for this one then. You can use this in any game, any racing game at all. This is how I would look at it and this is what I would do. As I say, I do hope you've enjoyed it. Please do give a like if you have. Subscribe to the channel to stay in touch with all the content. But that's going to be it for me now, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, wherever you are in the world. And I hope to see you in another video or live stream very soon.